Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie from Temple of Geek, and I am here with AJ Beckles and Abby Trott, the lead English dub voices of Okarun and Momo in the hit anime Don Don. How are you guys today?
I'm
Hi,
good.
great.
Hello.
Happy to
It
be
is,
here.
yeah, it's so great to talk to you guys about the show. This has been like a phenomenon in the anime world for sure. So this question is for both of you. What was your initial reaction when you found out that you were cast in this show? Were you familiar with the manga beforehand?
I'll let AJ go first.
Yes, I was familiar with the manga beforehand. It I've been a fan of the manga for a couple years before we got the auditions for it, so I was incredibly excited. Um, and I remember when I got the phone call, telling me that I was like the top choice. I almost cried. Like I was so happy. So yeah, it was just all excitement.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah, for me, I hadn't heard of it. I don't know how, but it was not on my radar until I got the audition. And I, from the moment that I saw the animation, because we were given two scenes to watch for the audition, I fell in love with the show before I had even seen any more than just these two scenes, because the animation, as you've seen, is insane. And also just the character of Momo immediately was super relatable, super fun, very dynamic, just something like every actor's dream. And so I shot my shot, and it was one of those roles where I really wanted it, but normally as an actor, you just like let things go after you do the audition because that's all you can do. And more times, more often than not, we don't get the role. So I was very surprised when I did get that call and I was cast as Momo, and I was super excited to see the rest of the show and immediately started reading the manga. So
Yeah, the animation is stunning. Like the sequencing in this show is absolutely beautiful. And so this, Donadan quickly became incredibly popular. It just, from the first episode, just exploded, took the internet by storm. Like it, for me, it became an instant favorite. I will say that right now. Um, and so these popular anime can have a significant impact on their viewers. What kind of positive impact are you hoping Dandadan will have on its audience?
Hmm.
hmm.
That's an interesting,
Yeah, so
unique question.
I I'm hoping one thing I love about this show and this manga is the relationship between Momo and Okarun, in that they are not perfect people and they're learning and evolving, and Okarun is teaching Momo to communicate better because she has a hard time, communicating her feelings, especially when her feelings are real serious ones. She has a hard time. Another thing is that I recently read an interview with Yukino Butatsu where he compares Momo to Superman, in that he says that when Momo is present, her presence inspires people to do better, and that ordinary people often look away, I think is what he said. And that is so relatable to me in this present day where we have so much turmoil in the world. Uh, Anime is one of those things that I've always found to be inspiring in that sense, where these
Mhm.
characters are doing their best, trying to be the best versions of themselves. So I hope Momo inspires people in that way. I think that's a really cool take.
Wow, what a
Yeah.
great answer.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
That was beautiful.
Thanks.
Um, I hope Okarun. I think Okarun and Momo can both kind of relate to the whole outcast thing. Like Momo, when she was a kid, was made fun of for like the stuff that her grandmother made her do, and in general, Okarun's whole life, he's been kind of made fun of. And I said at conventions like especially if you've been bullied or something, like as a kid, like you get used to being called names or being made fun of or being told you're weird, stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you are. It just means that you're a little different and people aren't used to that. And so they don't know what to do with it. But I think as we can all see through watching the show, like Momo and Okarun are both really, really cool people. So I hope it just like gives folks that might seem or feel like they're outcasts some confidence that it's okay to be that and just to be themselves and you can still be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much because, these 2 characters might seem kind of outcasty, like you said, but they are both, they have incredible strengths, and they have really cool duality about them, that I feel like a lot of us inherently do. We have our soft, quieter side and our loud, excited side, and we get to see both of those, in both of these characters. And so AJ, Okarun has the caring and sweet side. And then he also has his more intense, powerful side when
Yeah.
he changes into his turbo form. How did you approach voicing these two different aspects of his personality?
Well, I've played a lot of like more what's the word? I guess weaker sounding I don't even know how to describe it, but like the underdog, like a lot of those voices, like I do a lot of like high pitch, like oh, a little anxious, like so when I first saw like the scene that I was given for the audition, which was like, normal Okarun, I kind of already felt like comfortable in that area. I do like to do deeper voices, but I don't often get the opportunity. So when I had seen the second scene, which was, for his transformed mode, I that one took me a little bit more time and thinking. I just wanted to make sure that his like he was still cool. But I feel like the transformation is kind of like a subversion of the expectations of anime transformations, where he just becomes ultra cool. Like he's still cool, but he's like, I don't even want to be here. Like that's his whole vibe. So I wanted to make sure that came across, but while also not making him sound like too monotone. And yeah, it was kind of difficult, but to figure that out. But once I did, I was instantly comfortable.
Yeah, and you did a phenomenal job bringing that turbo form to life for sure. It was really cool to hear you voice someone so different in that aspect, like you said, because you do tend to voice the more anxious, high, pitched, like in Tokyo Revengers, like
Right.
the upset, very high strung character. And
Hmm.
so to see you in this role or to hear you in this role was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so Abby Momo, like Okarun, also has this duality of her character. She's strong and independent, but she's also vulnerable and sometimes a little insecure. How did you explore this honest duality of Momo in your performance?
Yeah, that again is one of the things that I really love about the character. We see in, I think, the very first episode, uh, a bunch of different sides of Momo. She is very outspoken. Generally, she'll stand up for the things she believes in. But when it comes to her feelings, I think she has a harder time processing those emotions. The When she's trying to, like, she'll acknowledge when she has made a mistake. She knows when she's messed up, but has a hard time apologizing. As we've seen, she'll kind of mumble her way through it. Um, so I tried to capture that kind of external versus internalization of those emotions when Momo is, standing up for her friends and she's yelling. Like that's the external, like very much outspoken. And then when she's withdrawn and kind of more internal, that's when she gets quieter and just has a harder time computing those emotions, which I can relate to as a teenager who didn't know how to handle emotions well. So
Yeah, absolutely. And her reactions to these things, especially like her romantic reactions, feel very relatable and very real. And so, how were you able to tap into those realistic feelings, like the jealousy and the frustration, to make her character so believable?
yeah, I think those are all human emotions that we can hopefully all relate to. they it This character too really brings me back to the high school days when I guess, like, as far as jealousy goes, I'm not one to have an outburst, everyone has jealous feelings, I think, but mine manifest themselves more as like self-doubt and like I'm not good enough, as opposed to like anger towards the other person. So it was, rechanneling those things and plugging in some other thoughts that had me put, like when Momo is attacking Ira for being a skank, for example, redirecting that sentiment that normally, I would feel, putting it on somebody else and just like turning that into anger as opposed to the internalized self-doubt that I would normally feel being jealous of someone.
Yeah, and you did a fantastic job. It was always fun to watch her blow up over something like that.
Yeah, her way of expressing jealousy and anger is more fun than the way I do it.
That's usually how it goes with characters like this, right? It's more fun to be able to explore that for sure, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so AJ, Okarun also goes through a lot of emotional turmoil. How did you prepare for and portray those intense feelings of the anger, denial, and frustration?
I like I was kind of saying earlier, there's a lot about Okarun that I think is very relatable to a very specific type of person. And I was that person growing up when I was in like middle school or whatever. Like I struggled with talking to girls the same way Okarun did, and I was not very cool and everything like that. So there's a scene like in the first episode where Okarun's kind of pouring his heart out, and that took a take or two, I believe, just for flaps and everything, but I was already right there in it because I related heavily to the idea of feeling that like loneliness. um but also there's the sense of appreciation that he has for Momo and Ira and now Gigi, where he's like, oh, wait, I actually have people. And now he has to learn how to have friends or how to interact with friends and what's okay and what's not okay. And um, that's an interesting thing to explore in general, but especially I think a lot of teenagers can relate to that sense of just discovering who they are and their place in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. And when both of you look back on your time recording these scenes, were there any scenes that stood out to you?
Hmm.
A few. One of
Yeah.
my favorite scenes is um, the scene, I think, AJ, this might be one of yours too. I think you mentioned before the back and forth of like, um, that when Okarun is leaving and
Mhm.
they're both like, see you
Yeah.
later, kind of the internalized. Um, that's not the line? Wait,
No, no, it's goodbye.
that's goodbye. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah. No, you're good.
I'm mixing up two scenes. So there's one where Okarun is leaving initially, and Momo says, "See you later," and then the screen goes black, and Okarun just says, "Okay." And I love that because it really sets up, like, he just sounds so happy, and it really sets up the dynamic between the two of them, and it's adorable. And then the second one is the goodbye scene, where this is another similar, like, parallel scene where Okarun is leaving, but this time say goodbye. And so it's like, what does that mean? Is that, is it permanent goodbye? Is it like a see you later goodbye? What is it?
Mhm.
And so we're just saying goodbye or goodbye over and over again. And
Mhm.
that took some work to get right. But
Yeah.
I really love the way that the scene came out because, again, it's such a relatable moment when you're a teenager and you're learning to communicate and you're trying to figure out what your feelings are,
Mhm.
and it's just a very adorable and relatable scene.
Yeah, and it's cool because like I feel like in a moment like that, normally Okarun just keeps walking. Like he's just like, well, I guess that's over. But like Momo is like, I'm not gonna let that happen. See you later. And he's like, ah, great. Which is it was really cool because not like you said, neither of them really knew how to express themselves in that moment. And is it even okay to want to, I don't know, still talk with this person that I barely know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I love that scene as well. And then I love the scene when they're in the water and this is after some heavy misunderstanding, um, where Okarun kind of acknowledges that, like, hey, because Momo's upset, Okarun acknowledges in the water, like, hey, like, you need to talk to me. I understand you're upset and you have every reason to, but if we're going to continue to be friends or like to have a good relationship, we need to communicate when these things happen. Um, which is really cool because also in earlier scenes, you can see how, like, after that misunderstanding happens, Okarun understands. He's like, oh, like, obviously he didn't do anything wrong per se, but he was like, well, I lied and that's wrong. And I didn't have to lie. And if I had not done that, maybe this doesn't happen. So he recognizes his faults, but he also is like, hey, look, like, I
Yeah.
understand, but we gotta talk through this, which is I thought was really cool.
That water scene too, I really like that one as well because Momo's like yelling in his face, right? He does not back down. He
Mhm.
Hmm.
for 1 second, like he's in it and he's gonna convince her, he's gonna talk through it. And I love that because Momo's anger is how she tends to push people away. Okarun's not
Mhm.
having it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Not pushed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes. It's very rare you get a communication scene like that, I feel like, in anime, especially like a battle shonen, like it's very rare that you actually have characters sit down and say, "Hey, this was clearly a misunderstanding. We need to work this out."
Hmm.
Because I know that the whole misunderstanding trope can be difficult because you're yelling at the screen, just talk to each other, right, like more often
Right.
than not. But here it didn't take very long for the two of them to go, hey, you know what, if we're gonna, like you said, if we're gonna be friends, if we're gonna work this out, like, we can't be mad at each other over something that didn't actually take place.
Hmm.
And so I think that that was really, really special. And the emotion between your two characters was spot on, phenomenal. Um, and so that leads me into my next question is Dandadan blends romance with the action of a battle shonen. How do you think this series successfully balances these two genres?
Yeah,
I
that's a great question. It's,
Yeah.
it's not even just those two genres. I feel like there's a lot of genres kind of thrown into the mix here. But
Right.
regarding those two specifically, I think a lot of time with typical shonen, you have your shonen protagonist and the characters surrounding them. And that shonen protagonist is generally a very naive, a little, they want to do their best. They're fighting for their friends. They are not always aware when a female is interested in them and will express their interest. It usually will go over their head, or they're kind of, it kind of has to be knocked into them. um, this this show has so far kind of bypassed a lot of those tropes in that, like, Momo is very much a central character, this female character, and their feelings, they're exploring these feelings. Okarun is very much aware of his feelings and is trying to be aware of Momo's feelings for him, and so it's a different dynamic right off the bat. I'm curious to see where the show goes from here because I'm not quite as caught up in the manga as AJ is. So yeah, it's been interesting and refreshing to see something a little different from your typical shonen.
Yeah. Like, kind of like what Abby was saying, there's so many genres, but like, kind of, this is my personal opinion. I don't know if this is Tatsu's, like, if this is what he's thinking when he's writing, but it feels like the shonen and the battles and like the aliens and the are all kind of just tools. Um, I feel like the main story really is about the romance and being a kid, but those things show how larger than life being a kid can feel and be. Um, so I think he does an amazing job blending all those things together because you kind of, as the viewer, I feel like just accept that the golden balls make sense, and all this other stuff is like, okay, because in those small moments when they're in school or like it's very real stuff, it's like, oh, it just feels so relatable. So I don't know. I think he does an amazing job of putting all this stuff together and having it not be a mushy mess.
Right, absolutely, and building on their friendship too, like, it's not just straight out like, "Oh my gosh, I have a crush on this girl, I need to pursue her," or, "Oh my gosh, I have a crush on this boy, and I have no idea how to act."
Yeah.
Like, it's building on it's giving them a really solid foundation,
Hmm.
as a friendship, and it's been really fun to watch that grow, because again, in a lot of shonen, the romance is just throw a girl at the main character, right? Like,
Right.
here's their love interest while all this other stuff is going on. But I think AJ, you said it perfectly. It does feel more like a romance with the shonen kind of in the background.
Hmm.
And so how do these different subplots influence your character's actions and motivations?
There's like with the like the golden ball thing right now, that's like what's kind of keeping them together and forcing all these like people that otherwise probably wouldn't talk into the same space. Um of course, like with Momo and her family, and like spirituality and everything like that is a very normal thing. So I think it naturally just leads to them coming together, and I think dealing with those very weird and specific problems also allows their characterization, their bonds to grow and evolve over time, which is really cool. Because it could just be, I don't know, another anime where it's like the main character is really strong and he defeats everything really easily, but it usually takes a mix of Momo being very smart, and Okarun being willing to trust her, and them working together and dealing with those kind of like the water scene underneath the surface of everything, right? Because I think Momo in that episode is like yelling at Okarun and being like, "Ah, you're messing everything up," and da da da, which could obviously affect how well they are able to accomplish tasks. So they kind of had to solve that in order to be able to get through the situation they're going through. So, which led them to grow as people, I think. So,
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good way of putting it where you said like they're kind of the the subplot kind of forces them together, which is true. Like I'm pretty sure Momo and Ira wouldn't be hanging out anytime.
No.
But it also makes for really interesting character dynamics because, when you throw the Mentos and the Coke, you get the sparked reaction. So just seeing these characters kind of clash and like how they relate to each other despite their differences, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I love that image of the Mentos and the Coke with the 2 of them. I feel like that's spot on, like, absolutely spot on. So, now we're gonna touch on the music a little bit, because I feel like the music in Dandadan is just outstanding. The use of, the different songs, as the scenes go on. Have you noticed how the music enhances the emotional impact of certain scenes?
I'm trying to think of a specific example.
Yeah.
in general, the music, like we luckily got the chance to meet Kensuke Ushio um, at Anime NYC when we were, I think, showing the first episode of the English dub. They brought like the Japanese cast as well as Kensuke Ushio. And the dude is just so full of life, and he's
Yeah,
so silly,
he's a
but he's
ham.
yeah, but he's a genius
He's a
too, and
genius
like
ham.
so good. And I think you can hear that, I don't know, genius in every single track that you hear, like because I feel like I don't want to missay anything, but I believe he has talked in the past like interviews about like how he approached like doing things digitally, and stuff like that, and using these older classical tracks and everything like that, and trying to mend all these things together to make something that is cohesive specifically for Dandadan, as opposed to other things that he's done in the past. And you can very much, I feel like, hear that.
Yeah. One track that I feel like really captures the mood is in the Nessie episode where the school is filling with water and like this is I can't remember the episode number, but as Momo sees like the head of Nessie come around the corner, just the vibes, the music is so perfect for the vibe, and it, I don't know, somehow reminds me of like the water temple in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Just like I don't know, just the way that it's got this kind of mysterious vibe to it, but it's also really really creepy, and I think it highlights that moment especially. And then of course, yeah, the chase scene was phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you guys get to know what the music will be before you record, or do you get to hear it after, kind of like we do when we watch the show?
We hear it when we're dubbing. So we'll get a taste of it. Sometimes you have to kind of quiet it down so that you can record, and especially if it's like loud and it's a lot. But we'll usually hear the music as part of the mix when we're dubbing, so we can get the flavor and tone of the scene.
That's really cool. That's awesome. If you could describe Don Don in 3 words, what
No.
would they be?
Uh,
Dawn to dawn. I'm just kidding.
these are always so hard for me because
Oh, you know what? I kind of what I tell people, just watch it. Some people are like, what is it? What's it about? What is it? Just watch it. Just watch the first episode, decide for yourself, because I feel like it's so crazy that if you try to explain it to anybody, I think it could be intriguing, but
yeah,
for some people, they'll be like, what the heck?
Right.
So I think it's better to just throw them into the deep end and have them discover what the heck it is themselves, because I feel like most people that do end up falling in love with it pretty quick.
yeah.
Mhm.
I'm gonna choose 3 words. I'm gonna say wild, sentimental, and unexpected.
Yeah.
But I
I
also
feel like
just take just watch it.
yeah, yeah, I feel like
Absolutely in 3 words what this show is. So
right. Yeah. I feel like those are really good descriptors of the show for sure. But yeah, just watch it does seem to be the best way to tell people. Cuz I feel like I tell people that. They're like, "What's it about?" Like and I'm like, "Uh, just
yeah.
it's really great. It's really great." Like there's 3 words. Like I love that. My final question, if you guys could portray any other character in the series, who would you want that to be?
Oh, this is not in my wheelhouse, but Turbo Granny, just because she's so funny.
Yes.
That's my favorite character right there. Barbara Goodson is incredible and like a perfect voice for this character. But just because she has some of the most fun dialogue in the show, she's a really good character.
Man, that's tough. Because I really, really love Okarun. I would
Mhm.
say, at least of the characters shown so far, I would also not in my wheelhouse, but the is it the Dover demon? Is that the guy, the crab dude? Um is that him?
I think he has a different
Is
name.
is it is it different name?
I know what
Uh
you're talking about. The
crab guy, punchy guy.
punchy
My,
guy in
Oh,
the
yeah.
the mantis shrimp guy?
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
okay,
He's
okay, yeah,
hilarious
yeah,
to me.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
him.
a fun one.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The
That
one
would be a
who's
lot
just
of
trying to
fun.
provide for his family.
Yeah, he's just trying to get some milk,
It's just a good
so
I love that so much. Well, thank you guys so much for taking time to talk about your characters and Don to Don. Your performance is spectacular, and we are very excited for season 2 coming out later this year.
Thank
Yes, thank you
you.
so much for having us. Also,
Yes.
super stoked for season 2, which is slated for July.
July, yeah, right
Yeah.
around the corner. So
Woohoo! I know it's gonna come really quickly.
I know, and I'm really excited as a manga reader, about what's coming. So I hope people love
Yes,
it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much.
thank
Thank
you.
you.